Welcome into the Autzen Audibles podcast. Erik Skopil, Jared Mack on the show with me, Matt Prehm. It's a spring preview, spring game preview, we should call it. April 26th, 1 p.m. at Autzen Stadium. It's going to be a little cloudy, rainy today on Friday, maybe a little rainy in the morning, but looking at the forecast, time of kickoff, 63 degrees and sunny. It's going to be a great day for some college football, and it'll be the only day that the fans and the media will be allowed to observe Oregon practice, play, whatever we want to call this. Don't have team rosters yet. That should come some point today on Friday when we know who's on what team. But they are playing a game, as Dan Lanning made it very clear back in March when spring football opened up, that this team is going to play. It's 4 quarters. It's a running clock. It's going to be nice and sweet, but it's going to be a football game. Unlike some teams that are moving just to practices or what they call showcases or whatnot, they're treating it as a game, and that is exciting in of itself. And it gives us an opportunity to kind of get a preview of what the fall could be, where guys are at, where roles have been established, what roles are still open to see play out.
Oh yeah, I mean this is our data point, our singular data point of watching this team, and we're in the same boat as the fans this year in terms of just the anticipation for seeing some sort of football. I was doing some pre-cap stuff here, kind of looking ahead to what I think this, kind of some things to look for. And I'll be honest, like I chose like 5 items for each of these stories I wrote this week on kind of like some players to look out for and some storylines. It could have been 10 to 20 items. There's so many points of curiosity with this team right now. So many unknowns. Like it was already going to be that way just because of how many departures there are with 5 returning starters. But the fact that we just haven't got to see anything either, like I'm fired up for this. I'm excited. There's a ton of things we can get into here today about just kind of where things are at and where we think they're at. And I guarantee you we're going to have conversations on Saturday being like, boy, were we wrong, because this is not at all what this position group looks like. Or, oh my gosh, this guy who we'd kind of forgotten about, man, he looks like a player. So yeah, certainly a fun time of year. And I mean, obviously I would love to have seen some practices, but it does kind of add to the, oh my gosh, so many mystery box items entering a Saturday.
Yeah, it's just like you said, Erik, it's a lot of mystery. This is a team that will be going to the year completely new. There's not a lot of returners on either side of the ball this year as compared to there have been the last 2 seasons under Dan Lanning. This will be a fresh, young start. People have been clamoring that they want to see the development from the younger guys and see them getting on the playing field and not taking as many transfer portal additions. Like this is going to be the year to see if all those things come true and come to fruition and see those guys perform out on the field. And the first step will be this spring game. Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of questions that I would like answered. I don't think we'll get most of them just because it'll still be a spring game at the end of the day. And, Will Stein even came out and said it. He's like, our offense is going to be vanilla. We're not going to show a lot of things on tape. We're going to try to throw the ball down the field and entertain the fans. But, I mean, there's going to be a lot of things learned, whether it be injuries, who's playing where, whatever the case may be. It's just a lot of mystery and question marks, like we were saying before.
Yeah, Stein called it, it's going to be a freshman practice, like very basic install. They'll still chuck it downfield, but it's all going to be basic stuff for what they do. But we can still learn a lot from that. We're going to kind of run through here the gamut of things we're looking forward to seeing play out. Why don't we set the order of Erik, Jared, and I will go third. So Erik, why don't you go first with item number 1 in your eyes of things to watch for Saturday?
Yeah, it's hard not to start with quarterbacks, right? Like I think that's just kind of naturally where we're at, and like there's a lot to look out for. I'll be curious to see what the split looks like. I mean, I think we all think this is a Dante Austin kind of battle, so I imagine they'll be on separate teams and kind of carrying the lion's share of the reps. But who knows? Maybe we'll be wrong. I also we haven't really seen Luke Moga do much anything since he was running really fast last year in the spring game. Haven't seen any Achilles Smith, so be excited to see the young guys play too. Be curious to see kind of what the rep count looks like. But I mean, really just kind of focusing in, like, I think we all want to know, like, is this quarterback competition for real? And that doesn't mean like they aren't trying to compete. They aren't, creating an environment where it is competitive and they're getting good reps out of it. But Like, is this legitimately Dante Moore versus Austin Novosad? This is really close. Like, there's a chance either guy could win the job, or is this simply what it's been a couple of times recently, where there's been a quote unquote competition where it concludes and you go, okay, well, they said it was a competition. They didn't decide till fall, or they didn't announce till fall, but kind of all along, maybe it was this kind of tilted this direction. Like, I don't know. We haven't seen any of the spring practices. It could be one of these guys is, whooping the other guy all spring, but at least the spring game will give us a data point and indication of where this is at. And I guess I'm just curious to see, like, head to head, and maybe it's unfair to do this way, but it's kind of the only way we can. What does Dante look like compared to what Austin looks like? Do we come out of this feeling like they're on kind of even footing? Do we come out of this going like, man, one guy really outperformed the other. This other guy really needs to step up this offseason to get where he needs to get to make this interesting come fall. Those are kind of the conversations. I'm excited to see both these guys. I think last year in the spring game, they both performed pretty darn well. Another year in the offense with Dante, another year of kind of filling out and maybe getting more physically ready for Austin. Like, these are the things I'm curious to see. So I think it's easy to start there. It's probably the obvious starting point, but it's also kind of the one that, gosh, if you just kind of look at it from a perspective of what matters most big picture, it's this position. They need to get this position right. And we'll see on Saturday kind of what it looks like.
Yeah, quarterback is the easy answer, and it's the correct answer because that's the most important position on the field and one of the most positions in all of sports. I'll be interested to see what kind of goes on there too. More interested in the guys returning like Austin and Dante rather than the younger guys, just because they're going to be more important this year. But
Sure.
Still interested to see how the development of Luke Moga and what Akili Smith looks like. But I think for me going into the game, I'm more interested to see what the secondary looks like as my number 2 pick. It's a group that has to replace all 5 starters from last season. And that was a pretty darn good unit. However, for the second straight year, Oregon's season ended because of, playoff aspirations and national championship aspirations ended because of a passing attack that took advantage of their secondary. This could be the same situation in the next couple months. So we'll be looking back on this and saying, oh, it played out again the same, or it could be different. But what Oregon has done this offseason has, they've hit the portal for 2 major additions in Theron Johnson and Dylan Thieneman, the cornerback and the safety, but they're going to trust their internal development. And guys like Jaleel Florence returning from injury, or going out and landing Naeem Offord and Brandon Finney and all these guys the last 3 recruiting cycles that were highly touted 4-star cornerback or safety prospects, and they're going to let them see the field. And I'm going to be interested to see what the rotations are, if it's even worth it to keep track of rotations, just because of how the game will be split up. So I guess rotations a little bit, but more just personal performances and how they look in coverage. This was a game last year where Dakota Fields stepped up and had a really nice interception. Unfortunately, he was injured during fall camp, so we never really got to see if he was going to play or anything like that last year. But you can see flashes of potential performances from any position on the field during a spring game. That's what makes it fun. But for me, it's just, who's playing where, who's playing boundary or field, or who's playing star, who's playing free or boundary safety. Like, there's just a lot of things that I want to know and might get the opportunity of understanding during the spring game, but we'll see what the rosters look like and how everything lines up.
Jared's right in saying the quarterback's the number 1 important position to wonder, but this is, I think, the 1B, because all 4 guys are gone. Like, you don't bring a single starter or 5 back. And I know Florence has started, but he wasn't healthy last season. So yeah, I would agree that, like, this is almost just as important as the quarterback position to see what happens here and what positions guys are at. I'll pivot, and I don't really have a position. The transfer portal, though, closes today, and we've seen across other schools, they have their spring games and guys are not there. And Dan Lanning has said that he likes his roster. He hopes every guy on it can have a place on the team in 2025. Players have to submit their information by 9 p.m. Pacific time tonight. The school then has 48 hours, business hours, to submit their name. So I would imagine, some guys could probably participate in the spring game and be in the portal at the same time. But do we see anyone not there? Like, do we see any late additions to the portal? we've seen a walk-on, Preston Alford. He went to the portal yesterday. We saw Roger Pleasant like a week ago or so leave the program. He's landed at UCLA. But do we see any last trickles of the portal and it impact Oregon, and where would those positions be? Like, I think defensive line maybe is one where you could potentially see some guys, just of how many young players there are that are redshirt freshmen, true freshmen, or sophomores at that group. Receivers probably another one where there's a lot of guys kind of bunched together from an eligibility standpoint. But do we see any portals? And I wouldn't be surprised if guys sit out because of injury or because of preventive injury, but they'll still be on the sidelines. But will we not be able to find the guy, and that opens the door of did he enter the portal?
Yeah, gosh, I hate that that's the conversations we have to have this time of year. Again, the calendar stinks. The fact that, just for Oregon specifically, where the spring game fell, the fact that it's just directly before the final close of the portal, like you said, Matt. Like, that's going to lead to some just kind of awkward circumstances, perhaps, if a guy's in the portal but wants to take part because he wants to use it as kind of a launch off point for other schools. And I would imagine Oregon would respect that and let those guys play a little bit just to get some snaps. I don't know. What would you do in that situation? It's a weird one of like a guy is clearly not going to be with the program. He's not technically benefiting you, but he has been with the team for a while. He has been through all of spring. Do you want to give him an opportunity to kind of showcase some of his skill set to be more attractive in the portal? I think the answer for Dan and company would be yes, but I could see why some schools may say, oh, okay, if you're going to transfer, you don't get to use our spring game showcase to be attracted, for other schools. So that is the weird part of this, Matt, and good call and kind of outlining that. That'll be something we'll be looking for in the box. And I hate that that's the confusion we might have of, is this player hurt and not here, or is this player transferring and not here? But either way, yeah, that'll be certainly part of what tomorrow is going to look like for us. Unless you had anything on that, Jared, I was going to move to number 2.
A lot of this would be avoided if we just got into a damn practice this spring. But
that's true too.
But there's construction that limits how much of the 57,000 seats that they can use at Autzen Stadium. So that's okay. It's fine.
Yeah, it didn't seem like it was too prohibitive for students that got to watch the practice a couple days ago. Anyway, back to the football portion of this. I think another thing that I'm curious about is just kind of like the young guys, like that, like just like a broad group of like guys we've never seen that were big time recruits. Right. Like who pops that, like whether it's a DeCorian Moore who's just got here, or it's one of the Iffy, yeah, a guy from last year who we were excited about who we didn't see play. Whether it's I'd clump in a Jurion Dickey as a young guy, even though he's been here for a couple of years, just because we haven't seen this guy do anything. But like, who are some of these exciting younger players? An Elijah Rushing or an Aiden Breland, the kind of the headliners from the 24 class. Which of those guys pop and kind of, because the reality is, I wrote this in a story a couple of days ago. Dan's "if you're good enough, you're old enough" thing. It sounds like an adage, but it's kind of been a shtick because it's just not really come together. And if you run through the numbers, and I've done that on the site, like there just hasn't been really any true freshmen that have done much of anything other than Poncho and Mateo and Tatum. Guys just haven't really been impact players. Like, who are the guys that maybe weren't impact players as true freshmen who are going to be impact players this year? And that list is bigger now. I mean, they talked about it all fall spring. We've got a lot of talent, but they're young. There's so many guys that we were high on as recruits who simply haven't had much of an opportunity and are now getting that opportunity. So who are the guys who step forward and you say, we like this guy maybe 2 years ago. We like this guy last year when they were entering the program. They didn't get their shot. Boy, here it is. Like those are the guys that'll be kind of fun, whether it is some of the names we've run through, or maybe an upset, like an unexpected name of like, could we see one of these younger receivers who were, I know Jeremiah McClellan's a highly regarded guy, but maybe Dylan Gresham or Jack Ressler, somebody like that from last year has a couple moments. You go, okay, there's a guy whose name we hadn't really incorporated in our receiver competition discussion. So, I know it's kind of a broad group, but the reality is a lot of these guys are going to be needed this year, and Saturday is going to give us a sense in a lot of cases of like what these guys can really do at this level.
Yeah. I mean, it's totally reasonable to have like this big encompassing young guys group because it's a lot of the team. like for
half
better
the,
or for
half the
worse.
team.
Yeah, like it hasn't been how it has been in years past where, they've gone out and gotten they have I mean Oregon has gone out and gotten transfer portal guys at certain positions, but depth purposes they really haven't. And that's something that they had done in years prior under Dan is like, oh, we need depth here. We're going to get transfer portal depth too. Like you can think of like Nico Reed a couple of years ago, obviously turns into a starter, but when he originally brought on, that was more of like a depth piece.
Right.
I think for me, another group that I want to look at is the linebacking unit. I feel pretty confident in who the starters will be in Bryce Betcher and Devin Jackson. There's just a lot of question marks after that. You have Jerry Mixon, who you assume would be the third string or second string or third overall running or linebacker, but then there's the group of Braden Platt, Kamar Mathuti, and Dylan Williams, and Gavin Nix, a true freshman, who you have no idea what they're capable of. And there really weren't any moments during the regular season last season where these guys got in and made a big impact. I think Braden Platt played the most out of any of those guys. But even Jerry Mixon, like Oregon doesn't really rotate their linebackers too often during the regular season, so you didn't get to see him either. And you would assume that if there is an injury to Devin or Bryce, knock on wood, like that you would feel comfortable with whoever is the backup linebacker like you have the past couple of seasons. That may or may not be the case. And I think the spring game will be the first time that we'll be able to see the development of a Platt, of a Kamar Mathuti or Dylan Williams, or what Gavin Nix just looks like in general on the field out there other than his high school tape. So that's an interesting position to me. I think it's kind of a little more like nitty gritty aspect of the team rather than like an overarching theme. But I think it can easily make or break a season. We all remember what happened in 21 when Justin Flo and Drew Mathis, were lost for the season in the same game. And then Keith Brown pulled his hammy, and then you had Nate Hukliana out there for the majority of the season, the majority of the snaps, and Jeff Bassa. And it's like, oh, this is bad. So these guys could potentially become incredibly important at their job. And, I want to just see, gosh, what they play like nowadays, because it's been many calendar months since we've seen any of them really step onto a field.
And we should note, like, Brian Michalowski was very adamant, like they're not going to go to the portal unless something drastic changes with this unit. Like
that was really interesting, Matt. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, like they're very confident with this group that they've got. So it's going to be an interesting showcase for this group in particular to see what they can do. I guess I'll do burying the lead here a little bit to Corian Moore. Like I know we talked a little bit about him, but like the hype here has been through the roof. Every once in a while you have a guy come through the program that you just instantly hear things and it's like he's really good. You heard all the talk when Marcus Mariota was redshirting that he's better than the starting quarterback Darren Thomas, and ultimately we saw Darren Thomas unexpectedly declare for the NFL draft after the Rose Bowl and went undrafted because he knew he was going to lose his job probably. We've heard the hype of DeAnthony Thomas when he showed up, and it's like, yeah, instantly he steps on the field day one and he's different. That those same comments are being made about Corian Moore, and fair or not, we have got no ability to verify those with our own eyes until Saturday. It'll be curious to see how much they showcase him in the offense. What opportunities do they give him to make big plays? Is it in the short game, just getting him out into open space, or do they let him loose and try and go deep? I think we'll probably see both, but it also is going to be dependent upon the quarterbacks and dependent upon how much they get time to protect against quite honestly, a defensive front that's going to be pretty good. So I'm curious to see just Corian Moore's impact, finally see what the hype is, because all the players talk about how impressive he is. The coaches have certainly tried to downplay it, but they've also, come out and said, yeah, like he has the things that we saw on film and it's confirmed. And to a lesser degree, a guy that goes by Coop Sauce, Cooper Perry, like
Coop Sauce,
he's kind of been the throwaway player in the recruiting class, because at the time they had 2 5-star receivers committed to Oregon, and he was the third, and that was a receiver committed, and everyone just kind of forgot about him. And it sounds like he's just been as impressive as DeCorian Moore, of a guy that makes a lot of plays, and that, a lot of DBs have said if the ball's up in the air, he's going up and he's getting it. So is this just the traditional yearly guy that kind of pops up and everyone kind of hypes up, and fall time comes around and he maybe plays 2 or 3 games? Or is Cooper Perry going to be a guy that kind of plays above the players that showed up a year ago, like a Jeremiah McClellan or a Dylan Gresham? And does he kind of get into the rotation in some capacity? I don't know. But we won't know those answers, but it'll be curious just to see how impactful he is as well as DeCorian Moore.
Yeah, I wish we had rosters now so we could have a sense of some of the matchups, because that was something that would be fun to look at, of like, okay, who's DeCorian Moore? Like, is it DeCorian against Naeem and Brandon? Like, could we see true freshmen on true freshmen out there? We don't have those answers. Obviously, folks want to know, do you get to see the first Moore to Moore connection, Dante to DeCorian? We don't know that yet, but that's information we'll have later. I'll just add on this, and then I'll do my final one. I will also be curious. You mentioned, Matt, 2 true freshman receivers. The 2 true freshman running backs, really, like, Dan was really pretty complimentary of De'Aaron Hill, which was, I'm not saying that's unusual that he's high on guys, but like, usually it's with that kind of that caveat thing. And maybe it's different when a guy just got here like 3 weeks ago, but he really said some things about De'Aaron that were like, kind of made me raise my eyebrows. Like, okay, like they think this guy's got a lot of juice. Like, maybe he's not going to be somebody you just totally write off. And obviously Jordan Davison, big bulky guy, looks like probably the most physically developed running back on this team besides maybe Mackay and Jay. Like, what are his contributions? So, and we know with the way these go, like, whether or not Mackay gets 1 drive or 2, like, it's going to be a lot of the younger running backs playing primarily in this game, especially when we get to the second half. So I think we'll see a lot of those guys. So yeah, good call. Just kind of throwing out some of those true freshmen. There are some other ones, obviously the corners. Jared kind of touched on them earlier. How are those guys? Where are those guys kind of on the pecking order? What's that look like? But just, I guess my last one will be just this run game. I was really kind of caught. I asked Will about kind of like just big picture. What's the thing that you're most pleased about from this spring? And he went right to it and said he wants this to be an offense where you can run the ball effectively, you can run to win. And you look at the way the season ended last year, and I think overall the run game was okay, although it did have like its lowest like per game output in 20 years and its lowest per carry output in like 7, I think, since 2018. But the way the season ended against Ohio State and Penn State, those teams ran all over them, and Oregon didn't run the ball very effectively. I think I had the story in the story. It was like 450 to 180 yards. It was just, not a way you win football games. And so Will said they found some things during the self-scout, said those things have been implemented in spring. He was pleased with kind of the progress and kind of getting that stuff sorted. I just want to see what this run game looks like. I know, to the point made earlier, like, we're getting very vanilla playbook. The offensive lines will be, won't be, the core 5 likely together. We saw what that looked like last year, where, gosh, the Lipe Moala and George Silva just got absolutely mauled a couple of times by guys, and it was ugly. So maybe we're not going to get a full sense of it, but just to, like, do we come away feeling like, hey, that run game, that looks pretty good compared to what we've seen in the past? Or is it just kind of like, hey, we can't really take anything away from it? I think just broadly, like, the fact that they feel like some progress has been made there is encouraging, and kind of is something I'll be keeping my eye out for on Saturday.
That was one of the things I was looking forward to as well. But then it was just like, it's vanilla offense, and the offensive lines are going to be all mix and match. And there's going to be like walk-ons playing with potential first-round picks in Isaiah World. And it's going to be like, all right, well, how much stock do I actually put into any of this that I'm seeing? And that's kind of the basics of a spring game in general. But I'm still interested to see that. I'm still really intrigued about Mackay Hughes and just what he looks like in person running the ball. And De'Aaron, kick punt returner. I'm just saying, been saying it for months. I think that could be his role with how much juice he has. But we'll see eventually. That could be a DeCorian Moore spot. For me, real quick,
I just want to throw in about Mackay. I don't think it matters a vanilla offense or walk on against starter. Like, in this situation, I'll be excited to just see Mackay Hughes run the football and try and truck dudes. And that will not matter what the offense style is or who he's matching up against. He's a brick wall and absolute bowling ball. And honestly, like, he looks like a defensive, like a linebacker or a defensive outside edge guy from a body perspective, just from a width wise. I'm excited to see that play. So I'm happy you mentioned him. Go ahead, Jared.
Yeah. No, I'm stoked to see him as well, just in person. Like I loved watching his tape over the offseason and just again trucking through guys and having guys bounce off of him. He's a different type of runner, I think, than what Oregon has had recently with compared to Jordan and Bucky. But the last thing, I'm just gonna go watch the trenches for most of the game. Kind of zone in on more single players rather than the whole defensive or offensive line as a one because of the point I just mentioned where there's going to be scattering of players. Like I remember a couple years ago, Trevin Mai looked like the second coming of Michael Strahan or Osi Umenyiora. Like it was like, oh no, he's just going against Bailey Jaramillo. No disrespect, Bailey, obviously, but when you play when you play scholarship for scholarship, it usually looks a lot different, and you don't want to put too much stock into guys' production if they've been going against guys who are just brand new to campus or an upperclassmen or just inferior. But yeah, no, I just kind of want to see how Mateo looks. I want to see if he's improved his pass rush game because I think that was a real problem towards the end of last season. How Mateo moves with his added weight, what Bear Alexander looks like. Then on the offensive line side, Emmanuel Pregnon and Poncho and that interior front, how Matthew Bedford's moving around, what Isaiah World looks like. More individual guys rather than the unit there, like the secondary or the linebacking group, like I mentioned earlier. But a lot of talent up front. I just want to see how those guys kind of go to work in a spring game. I know it won't be 100%, but I'm still excited to kind of watch how those guys are working about their craft.
I'm along the O-line, like I will be curious to see individually just how athletic like an Isaiah World looks or a Harkey, Manuel Pregnon. Obviously, they're going to be they'll probably be in some like one-on-one situations that they should dominate, but you just want to like fact check it of athleticism. A lot's been said about those guys, so I would agree with Jared there. I'm going to go tight end though. We know what Kenyon Sadiq could do, but like after that, it's kind of a big question mark. How healthy is Roger Saligapaga from last season? Is he able to participate? What does Jamari Johnson look like as a transfer portal addition as a big sophomore? Where is Vander Plug as a true freshman? Is he up to speed? Does he look like a guy that physically could play if needed? AJ Pugliano is a guy that was hurt last season. Is he healthy and able to help? And then, like, I thought this was really interesting. When we spoke with Will Stein on Tuesday, he was very adamant, like, Zach Grace is going to have a role on this team in some capacity. He called him kind of like a de facto fullback, but he's more than that. He played quite a bit last season. I think he played in, like, double-digit games. Is this going to be a guy that they lean on? Do they have to lean on? And sometimes you can just tell, you can watch and look at a unit and say, yeah, they need another guy. And if we get that vibe from watching the spring game, you kind of would probably anticipate they look at the portal to see what happens. And this is a group that probably could use one, but we'll see. We'll see what the group looks like in the game. And just from an athletic standpoint and a playmaking standpoint, do we see anything outside of Kenyon Sadiq here?
Yeah, I'm happy you brought that up, Matt, because I asked Will about this and I was surprised. I was like, hey, excluding Kenyon, because we know what that is. Like, what else do you guys really have? And he pointed out Jamari, who he said is coming back from injury and starting to show off some of those kind of physical tools that they were excited about when he entered the portal. And then the only other tight end he talked about was Zach Grace and how he wanted to incorporate him more in the offense. That was new information to me that Zach Grace was going to be maybe more pivotal to the tight end group than several of these scholarship former four-star recruits. So we'll see how that plays out. Like, I don't expect we come out of the spring game being like Zach Grace spring game MVP. I don't think that's going to be a take any of us have, but like, just be familiar with him. Number 44 on offense, not number 44 on defense, because as Will alluded to, the commentators got that wrong all the time last year. Just keep an eye out. Like if he makes a couple of plays, like, don't be surprised. This is somebody who might be a walk-on, maybe isn't the quote unquote big physical, athlete that looks the part necessarily, but like still somebody who is capable of contributing. I think he's like 6'3", 245. Like I'm just saying he's not the 6'6", 250 Jamari kind of type. I'll be curious to see kind of like, let's see what he does out there as kind of that is he their third tight end this year? If that's the case, that would be, to me, somewhat concerning. But maybe we'll come out of the spring game and at a fall been like, hey, actually, we were overlooking this guy, and he's perfectly effective to fill whatever role it is these guys want for him on offense there.
Yeah, I mean, this would be 3 years in a row, I'd be saying, add a tight end to the tight end room and hit the transfer portal hard. I just feel like Oregon's kind of neglected that spot over the last couple of seasons. But yeah, when you do have, Herb and Ferguson, that is certainly a nice start to a room. Neither of those guys are there anymore.
Nope.
And you're relying pretty heavily on Kenyon and Jamari, a guy who's coming off of a season-ending injury last year at Louisville. So we'll see. Maybe it is. Maybe there is somebody who steps up and is that third tight end, and they're all good. But I don't think it would hurt. They got the numbers in their favor right now, so I don't think it would hurt.
Kind of unplanned question here for us. Let's exclude the quarterbacks from this conversation because I think that's the obvious, easy answer. What's the player we're going to talk about the most? Like, who? Name one guy that everyone's going to be buzzing about. We can't name quarterbacks because that's what everyone should be talking about. So let's exclude them. I have a name. If you want me to go first?
Yeah, go first, Matt. Yeah.
I think I'm going to go Mekhi Hughes. Knowing the vanilla offense, knowing they're going to keep things kind of simple, that tend to leads to running plays. I think he's going to have a different, like to Jared's point, he's a different kind of runner than Oregon's had the last couple of seasons. It would not surprise me if he has 100 yards and less than 15 carries. I just kind of think this is a guy that's going to big playability. He's going to truck a couple guys. He might score a touchdown or two. And we're going to come walking away thinking like, holy smokes, they have someone totally different at that running back position. And we know as much as they've thrown the ball during Dan Lanning's era, they still want to run the football effectively, consistently every single day.
I think it's like built in. We're just going to talk about Decorian a lot.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the answer. I also think, and maybe I'll let you, Jared, specify. I think there's going to be like a corner who just pops and we go, because there's such a hole of like what we think that room is and who the guys are there. If somebody really pops, we're going to be like, oh, there's their alpha corner. So I don't know. I have no idea who that is. Maybe Jared, you can throw a dart about the dartboard and give us your guess. But
I've got
I wouldn't be surprised if we come away being like, hey, this corner is really taking a step and this is important.
Yeah, objectively, the correct answer is Decorian Moore. He's the highest rated wide receiver to ever come to Oregon. People have already been talking about him. People are already excited to see it. I saw a tweet the other day that had hundreds of likes. That was 4 days until we get to watch Decorian Moore. And it's like, good Lord. Anyways, yeah, it's going to be Ife Obadegwu. That's who we're going to be talking about in the secondary come Saturday afternoon. He's been another guy who a lot of people have talked about this year. Very highly touted recruit last year. Didn't play. I'm pretty sure it was from an injury. Retained his redshirt freshman season. Big, long, lanky fella. And I think that he could be cornerback 2 opposite of Theron Johnson. And I think that he's going to be a guy that we could be talking about pretty early on and often this year.
Take your shot. I like it. Call your shot. It could be one of a handful of names there. There's no question.
One of 12. Yep. It's going to be iffy, though.
I wrote, I think that there's like 34 possible combinations of starters that we could come out of the spring game being like, I think that's our guys. I think those are the two. So yeah, we'll see what happens.
It's interesting though you picked Ife over Thieneman. Like everybody's gushed about Thieneman.
Yeah, we were just talking corners though. But
sure.
Thieneman could definitely be another guy that people talk about. But yeah, I mean he's a stud. He'll probably be all around the field, or he won't see the field because it's a spring game. They don't want him to get hurt.
True. All right. I think that's going to do it for us here on the show. We'll have a recap following Saturday's conclusion of the game. Again, 1 p.m. kickoff, Big Ten Network. If you're not in Eugene, if you can get to Eugene, I highly encourage you to do it. It's a fun event. They're doing their typical honoring the military event around it. I think there's like F-14 flyover or something in that capacity as well. So, yeah, get to Eugene if you're in town. If you're not, watch it on the Big Ten Network, and all three of us will be back here Saturday afternoon breaking this down and giving you our thoughts fresh from the spring game. But until then, you've been listening to the Autzen Audibles podcast.
Talk to you later, folks.
Peace.